The emerald dropship cut through the lavender skies of Aurelius like a silver blade. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Blackwood gripped the control panel as warning lights flashed across the dashboard. The atmospheric readings were going haywire, oxygen levels higher than Earth's, strange gas compositions and heat signatures, unlike anything he'd encountered in his 15 years with the Earth Federation. Horizon Command, this is Scout Pod Alpha 7, experiencing severe turbulence upon entry to Aurelius atmosphere. Requesting guidance. Ryan's voice was steady despite the violent rocking of his small craft. Captain Reyes's voice crackled through the comm system. Alpha 7, maintain current trajectory. Our sensors indicate a clearing approximately 20 kilometers from your position. Attempt landing there. We're tracking you, Blackwood. Copy that, Horizon. Ryan adjusted the thrusters, fighting against the strange air currents that seemed determined to toss his pod around like a leaf in a storm. The ship groaned in protest. Hidden among the dense purple foliage of a massive tree, a slender figure watched the alien craft's descent with wary eyes. Neri, a forest guardian of the Aurelian people, tightened her grip on the smooth wooden staff in her hands. The outsider vessel bore markings she had never seen before, different from the raiders who occasionally breached their world's boundaries to hunt their sacred creatures. Her golden eyes with vertical pupils like a cat's narrowed as she observed. Her pale blue skin, adorned with natural patterns that glowed faintly in the shadows, helped her remain hidden. The elders had warned about outsiders; they brought only destruction. But duty bound her to watch and report, rather than act impulsively. Inside, the pod systems were failing rapidly. The navigation computer flickered and died. Auxiliary power stuttered. Horizon, I'm losing control. Switching to manual landing procedures. Ryan's training kicked in as he bypassed automated systems. Primary engines offline. Deploying emergency landing protocols. The pod lurched toward the canopy of massive purple trees, their trunks as wide as buildings. Ryan gritted his teeth as he fired the emergency thrusters in short, calculated bursts. The craft broke through the upper canopy branches and foliage, scraping against the hull with sounds like fingernails on metal. With a final push of the remaining power, Ryan managed to angle the descent toward a small clearing. The pod hit the ground hard, skidding across mossy terrain before coming to rest against a massive tree trunk. The impact knocked Ryan unconscious. Neri watched as the strange vessel crashed. She waited in perfect stillness for nearly an hour, observing for any movement, any threat. The forest had gone quiet, the colorful avians and tree-dwelling creatures sensing the intrusion. Only the distant calls of the deep forest predators continued unabated. Finally, the hatch of the alien craft hissed open. Neri tensed, ready to flee or fight if necessary. A figure stumbled out bipedal, like her people but with pale skin, that reminded her of the soft underside of forest fungi. The creature, a male she assumed from the build, wore a uniform of deep blue with silver insignias. He touched a device on his wrist, speaking words in a language unknown to her. When no response came, he sighed visibly and began to assess his surroundings. Ryan Blackwood had survived worse landings, but not many. His head throbbed where it had struck the control panel, and his ribs ached with each breath. The medical scanner on his wrist showed no broken bones, small mercies. The atmospheric composition was breathable, though the higher oxygen levels made him feel slightly lightheaded. Horizon Command, this is Blackwood. Pod down on surface. Communications impaired. Initiating survival protocols and will attempt to establish contact when possible. He knew the message likely wasn't transmitting, but protocol dictated he try. Scanning the massive forest around him, Ryan was struck by the alien beauty. The vegetation was predominantly in shades of purple lavender and deep blue, with occasional bursts of crimson and gold. The air was thick with humidity, smelling of something like cinnamon and ozone. The gravity was slightly less than Earth's, and he found himself adjusting his movements to compensate. He retrieved his emergency pack from the pod water purifier nutrient packs, medical supplies, scientific instruments, and his standard-issue non-lethal pulse pistol. Federation protocols were clear. First contact scenarios required non-violent approaches. Ryan set up a small camp beside his pod, using the shelter of the massive tree it had crashed against. He would need to assess the damage, see what could be salvaged for communications. The horizon would be looking for him, but on an uncharted world like Aurelius, it could take days or weeks. As darkness fell, strange bioluminescent plants began to glow in blues and purples, casting the forest in ethereal light. Insects, or what seemed like insects, chirped and hummed in complex patterns. Ryan activated the pod's emergency beacon, hoping its signal would penetrate the dense canopy overhead. In the growing darkness, he failed to notice the golden eyes still watching him from the trees. Morning came with a chorus of alien birdsong and a heavy mist that clung to the forest floor. Ryan had slept fitfully, awakened repeatedly by unfamiliar sounds and the persistent feeling of being watched. He boiled water collected from a nearby stream, adding a purification tablet before drinking. As he conducted a perimeter check, a sound stopped him cold, a low, rumbling growl, unlike anything he'd heard before. Slowly, he turned toward its source. At the edge of the clearing stood a creature that reminded him vaguely of Earth's extinct saber-toothed tigers, but with significant differences. Its 6 legs ended in paws, with opposable digits. A mane of what appeared to be feathers, rather than fur, surrounded its massive head. Most striking were the twin tails that ended in spiked clubs, and the iridescent purple-black coloration that seemed to shift with the light. But what truly caught Ryan's attention was the smaller version of the creature, half hidden behind its parent, a cub, curious, yet cautious. From her perch, Neri watched with increasing tension. The human had encountered a ferocious, the most revered and feared predator of Aurelius. Her people avoided direct contact with the beasts, respecting their territory and power. The ferocious were considered sacred embodiments of the forest's strength. She readied herself to witness the outsider's death, a grim but necessary reminder of why her people lived in harmony with the forest, rather than challenging it. Yet, she felt an unexpected pang at the thought. This outsider had shown no signs of being a hunter like the others. Ryan stood perfectly still, his pulse racing, but his exterior calm. Reaching slowly into his pack, he retrieved a protein bar. With deliberate movements, he unwrapped it, broke off a piece and tossed it halfway, between himself and the creatures. The adult ferocious sniffed the air, rumbling low in its throat. The cub made a chirping sound, almost like a question. "It's okay," Ryan said softly, knowing the creatures couldn't understand his words, but hoping his tone would communicate his intent. "I'm not here to harm you." To Neri's astonishment, the adult ferocious made no move to attack. Instead, after a long, tense moment, it nudged its cub forward. The young creature cautiously approached the offered food, sniffed it, then quickly snatched it up before retreating to its parent's side. Ryan remained still, offering a small smile. "That's right. Just a little welcome gift." The adult ferocious made a sound that seemed almost like acknowledgement, before turning and disappearing into the underbrush, its cub bounding after it. Once they were gone, Ryan expelled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His hands trembled slightly from the adrenaline. That had been either incredibly stupid or incredibly lucky, probably both. In her hiding place, Neri was conflicted. The outsider had not only survived an encounter with a ferocious, but had somehow offered food that the sacred beast accepted. Such a thing contradicted everything her people believed about outsiders. The Forest Guardian's teachings held that all who came from beyond the sky were destroyers, seeking only to take. Yet this one had shown respect. She decided to continue watching. One unusual interaction didn't erase generations of painful history with sky people. Over the next 3 days, Ryan established a routine. Mornings were spent attempting repairs on his communications array, midday on exploring the immediate vicinity and cataloging the local flora and fauna, and evenings on maintaining his journal and equipment. To his surprise, the ferocious and its cub returned each day, always keeping a distance, but seemingly growing more comfortable with his presence. By the third day, the cub would accept food directly from his outstretched hand, while the adult watched carefully. "You're quite the characters, aren't you?" Ryan mused, as the cub playfully batted at his fingers after taking a piece of dried fruit. "I should give you names. How about Thorn for the big one, and maybe Pebble for you, little one?" The cub made a trilling sound that Ryan chose to interpret as approval. Neri had moved her observation post closer, fascinated despite herself by the outsider's interactions. No Aurelian had ever established such a rapport with a ferocious. The creatures were widely given space and respect, not approached, and certainly not named like pets. On the fourth day, as Ryan sat cross-legged near his pod, working on a circuit board, he addressed the forest without looking up. "I know you're there," he said calmly, in the direction where he'd spotted movement. "You've been watching me for days. I'm not here to cause harm." Neri froze, her heart racing. How had he detected her? She prided herself on moving silently, being one with the forest. After a long pause, Ryan continued working, seemingly unbothered by the lack of response. "My name is Ryan Blackwood. I'm a lieutenant commander with the Earth Federation. My ship crashed and I'm trying to repair my communications to contact my people." He paused, then added, "I respect this place and its creatures. I follow a code called the Non-Interference Directive. I'm not here to take anything or hurt anyone." Another long silence followed. Ryan had almost given up when a soft voice spoke from the trees in halting but understandable English. "Why do the ferocious trust you?" Ryan carefully kept his eyes on his work, sensing that direct attention might scare the observer away. "I don't know. Perhaps because I don't fear them or threaten them. I offer respect. Outsiders before you have come to hunt, to kill, to take." The voice had moved slightly, circling his position. "I'm not them," Ryan replied simply. "I'm a scientist and explorer. We seek knowledge and peaceful contact, not conquest." Finally, he caught a glimpse of movement at the edge of his vision, a humanoid figure with blue skin and golden eyes dressed in garments that seemed to be made of plant material and adorned with symbols he didn't recognize. "I am Neri," the figure said, still partially concealed by foliage. "Forest guardian of the Aurelian people. You are in a sacred grove." Ryan nodded acknowledgement. "I apologize for the intrusion. My landing wasn't planned." He gestured to his damaged pod. "Once I repair my communications, my people will come for me, and I'll leave your sacred place in peace." Neri studied him with intensity. "The elders teach that all sky people bring death, yet the ferocious allow you near their young. This has never happened." Before Ryan could respond, a familiar rumbling growl announced the return of Thorn and Pebble. To his amazement, the adult ferocious acknowledged Neri with a dip of its massive head before approaching Ryan directly. Pebble bounded over with growing familiarity, chirping excitedly, and rubbing against Ryan's leg like an oversized house cat. Neri emerged fully from the foliage, her expression a mixture of awe and confusion. "They greet you as kin. How is this possible?" Ryan gently scratched behind Pebble's ear-like appendages, earning a sound like purring. "I don't know. Perhaps intentions matter. I mean them no harm, and somehow they sense that." Thorn, the adult ferocious, settled nearby, massive paws tucked under its body, watching them with intelligent eyes. "Our legends say the ferocious can sense the heart's truth," Neri said cautiously, approaching closer, but still maintaining distance. "They turn vicious only against those with darkness inside." Ryan offered a small smile. "Then I'm glad my heart passes their inspection." This unexpected meeting marked the beginning of a cautious dialogue. Neri remained wary, but the ferocious's acceptance of Ryan seemed to have cracked her initial hostility. Each day, she would appear at the edge of the clearing, observing his repair attempts, and occasionally answering his respectful questions about Aurelius. He learned that the Aurelians were a people deeply connected to their forest world. They lived in dwellings built into the massive trees, using the natural resources without harming the living plants. Their society was organized around guardians like Neri, who protected territories from threats and maintained the balance of the ecosystem. "Your people, the Sky People, have come before," Neri explained one evening, as they sat on opposite sides of Ryan's small campfire. "They brought machines that burned through the canopy. They took ferocious cubs and other creatures. They killed those who tried to stop them." Ryan's expression darkened. "They weren't from the Earth Federation then. We have strict laws against such actions. These sound like poachers, criminals who hunt endangered species for profit. They're outlaws among my people too." Neri's golden eyes reflected the firelight. "You distinguish between types of Sky People. For us all who come from above have brought suffering." "I understand," Ryan said quietly. "Trust must be earned. I hope to show you that not all humans mean harm." The next morning, Ryan was adjusting his beacon when a distant sound caught his attention. Mechanical engines different from his pod systems. Neri appeared at the edge of the clearing, her expression tense. "More Sky People," she hissed. "I heard their flying machine land beyond the ridge." Ryan grabbed his scanner, adjusting it to maximum range. "Not my people. The horizon would broadcast identification signals I could detect." His expression grew concerned. "Could be the poachers you mentioned." Neri's grip tightened on her staff. "I must alert the other guardians." "Wait," Ryan said. "Let me come with you. If these are poachers, I want to help stop them. The Federation considers such actions criminal." Neri hesitated clearly, torn between instinctive distrust and the evidence of Ryan's behavior thus far. Finally, she nodded. "Follow but silently. We go to the high trees first to observe." Together, they moved through the forest Ryan, following Neri's lead as she navigated paths invisible to his eyes. Her movements were fluid and silent, perfectly attuned to the environment. He did his best to match her stealth, grateful for his Federation wilderness training. They climbed a massive tree with handholds that seemed almost designed for climbing. From a high branch, they could see across a section of the forest to where a sleek ship had landed in a small natural clearing. The craft was black, with no identifiable markings, clearly designed for stealth operations. Ryan used his binoculars to observe. 5 figures in camouflage gear were unloading equipment cages, weapons, and what appeared to be tracking devices. "Definitely poachers," he whispered. "Professional ones by the look of their gear." Neri's expression was grim. "They seek the ferocious. The young bring the highest price." A cold anger settled in Ryan's chest. In all his years with the Federation, he had seen the devastating effects of poaching on various worlds. Entire species driven to extinction for trinkets and trophies. "We need to warn Thorn and Pebble," he said, "and any other ferocious in the area." Neri looked at him with surprise. "You would help protect them?" "Without question," Ryan replied firmly. They descended and moved swiftly through the forest, heading back toward the area where the ferocious pair usually appeared. Along the way, Neri used a small wooden instrument to produce calls that seemed to blend with the natural forest sounds. "Warning signals," she explained briefly. "The Guardians will hear and prepare." When they reached the familiar clearing, there was no sign of the ferocious. Ryan hoped they had sensed the danger and hidden deep in the forest. But as they continued their search, a pained roar echoed through the trees, sending flocks of bird-like creatures into the air. "Thorn," Ryan said with certainty, recognizing the distinctive sound. They ran toward the source, moving as quietly as possible, while still maintaining speed. In a small gully between massive root structures, they found the adult ferocious, caught in a cruel energy trap that immobilized its hind legs with pulsing blue restraints. Pebble circled anxiously, making distressed chirping sounds. When the cub saw Ryan, it bounded over, nudging against him urgently, as if asking for help. "Stand guard," Ryan told Neri, already examining the trap. "This technology is illegal in Federation space. It causes intense pain to control the animal." Neri positioned herself at the edge of the gully staff, ready, while Ryan approached Thorn cautiously. The massive creature's eyes were wide with pain and fear, but it made no move to attack him. "I'm going to help you," Ryan said soothingly, reaching slowly for the control panel on the side of the trap. This will hurt for a moment, then get better. Using his technical knowledge, Ryan bypassed the trap's security measures and initiated a slow, power-down sequence, rather than an abrupt deactivation that might shock Thorn's system. As the energy field diminished, the Ferocious's muscles relaxed. Finally, the restraints deactivated. Thorn struggled to stand, legs weak from the energy field's effects. Ryan backed away, giving the creature space. To his surprise, Thorn limped over and lowered its massive head, gently pressing against Ryan's chest, in what could only be interpreted as gratitude. Neri watched the interaction with wide eyes. "The Sacred One thanks you," she whispered, awe evident in her voice. "This is unprecedented." Their moment was interrupted by voices approaching. Ryan motioned for silence, then whispered to Neri, "We need to get them away from here. The poachers will be tracking the trap signal." Neri nodded, then made a complex series of clicking sounds with her tongue. Thorn responded immediately, nudging Pebble toward a dense thicket. Neri pointed Ryan toward a different direction. "We separate. Harder to track. Meet at the Great Falls when night comes." Before Ryan could protest, she had vanished into the underbrush with the ferocious pair. He quickly moved in the direction she had indicated, using all his training to avoid leaving an obvious trail. As he navigated the increasingly dense forest, Ryan's mind raced with plans. The poachers represented a threat, not just to the wildlife, but potentially to the Aurelians as well. If he could disable their ship, it might buy time until the horizon found him. Hours later, as dusk settled, Ryan found the falls. Neri had mentioned, a spectacular cascade of water that glowed with bioluminescent organisms, falling at least 100 meters into a deep pool below. The sound would mask their voices, making it a perfect meeting place. Neri arrived shortly after alone. "The Sacred Ones are hidden in the deep tangle, a place poachers cannot easily reach," she explained. "Many Guardians now know of the threat. We are mobilizing." Ryan nodded. "These poachers are well equipped. I recognize their technology. It's from the Orion Syndicate, a criminal organization. They won't give up easily if they've come this far." "What do you suggest?" Neri asked, and Ryan noted the shift. She was asking his opinion, rather than simply tolerating his presence. "We need a multi-pronged approach. Protect the Ferocious, yes, but also disable their ship to prevent escape. And I need to modify my beacon to send a different signal, one that the Federation will recognize as a priority distress call." Neri considered this. "The Guardians can lead the Sacred Ones deeper into the forest to places only we know. But the ship—" "I can handle that," Ryan said. "I have training in various spacecraft systems. If I can get close enough, I might be able to sabotage their engines, without them knowing until it's too late." They spent the night planning, sharing knowledge of the terrain and the poachers' likely strategies. Ryan was impressed by Neri's tactical thinking and intimate knowledge of the forest. In turn, she seemed to appreciate his technical expertise and experience with criminal organizations like the Syndicate. By morning, they had a plan. Neri would coordinate with other Guardians to protect the Ferocious population, while Ryan would infiltrate the poachers' camp and sabotage their ship. "There is something you should have," Neri said, as they prepared to part ways. From a pouch at her waist, she withdrew a small stone that glowed with an inner light, pulsing gently, like a heartbeat. "A heartstone. It will help you move through the deep forest without being detected by its defenses." Ryan accepted the gift with appropriate solemnity. "Thank you. I'll return it when this is over." "Keep it," Neri said, her golden eyes holding his. "The forest has accepted you. This is rare." They parted ways, each with their mission. Ryan moved through the forest with new confidence, the heartstone warm against his chest where he'd secured it. He noticed that certain plants that had seemed to reach for him earlier now bent away, creating a path. By midday, he had located the poachers' camp again. 2 guards remained with the ship, while the others were out setting traps. Ryan observed from cover, noting their patrol patterns and the ship's design. It was a Valkyr-class hunting vessel notorious for its speed and stealth capabilities. The ship's power core would be near the rear, protected but accessible through the maintenance panels. Ryan waited patiently until one guard left to check the perimeter, leaving only one by the ship's ramp. Using a small sonic device from his survival kit, he created a distraction, a sound like a wounded animal some distance away. When the remaining guard moved to investigate, Ryan slipped aboard the ship. The interior was Spartan and utilitarian, designed for function rather than comfort. Ryan moved silently toward the engine room, his Federation training, allowing him to interpret the ship's layout correctly. In the engine compartment, he quickly located the primary power coupling. Rather than completely disabling it, which would be immediately detected, he introduced a subtle flaw, a bypass that would cause the engines to fail when pushed beyond atmospheric flight velocity. He was replacing the access panel when a noise alerted him to someone's approach. Ducking behind a stack of cargo containers, Ryan held his breath as one of the poachers entered, checked a reading on the wall panel, and then left again. Once certain he was alone, Ryan slipped back out of the ship the way he had come, using the Heartstone's strange protection to move unseen through the underbrush, away from the camp. His next task was to modify his emergency beacon. The poachers would no doubt detect the standard frequency, but if he could alter it to use a Federation encrypted channel, the Horizon might pick it up while the hunters remained unaware. Meanwhile, Neri had gathered a dozen fellow Guardians at a hidden meeting place deep in the forest. She explained the situation and, to her surprise, found ready support when she mentioned Ryan. "The outsider who speaks with the Sacred Ones," one Elder Guardian asked. "Stories have reached us. The forest whispers of his respect." The Guardians split into teams, some to lead the ferocious deeper into protected territories, others to monitor the poachers' movements, and a few to prepare the forest's own defenses. For Aurelians possessed knowledge passed down through generations about how to activate certain plants' defensive mechanisms, thorns that could pierce metal vines that responded to particular vibrations, pollens that induced disorientation in intruders. By nightfall, Ryan had successfully modified his beacon and activated it from a high point in the canopy. The encrypted signal would be detectable by Federation ships, but would appear as background radiation to standard sensors. He returned to the meeting place agreed upon, with Neri finding her waiting with two other Guardians. "The Sacred Ones are being guided to safety," she reported. "But the hunters have already captured two young ones. They keep them in energy cages in their camp." Ryan's jaw tightened. "We need to free them before the poachers leave. I've disabled their ship for space travel, but it will still function within the atmosphere." One of the other Guardians, an older male with darker blue skin and elaborate markings, spoke. "I am Cavil, Elder Guardian of the Western Territories. Neri tells us you have shown unusual respect for our world. Is it true you communed with a ferocious mother and child?" Ryan nodded. "We developed a mutual understanding. They're remarkable creatures." Cavil studied him intently. "In all our history, no outsider has been accepted by the Sacred Ones. This speaks to something special in your spirit." He turned to Neri. "Your judgment is sound. We will work with this sky person." Together, they formulated a rescue plan. The Guardians would activate the forest's defensive plants around the poachers' camp, creating confusion and channeling the hunters away from their ship. Meanwhile, Ryan would free the captured cubs, and Neri would guide them to safety. "They will return at dawn with their day's captures," Cavil explained. "That is when we will act." They spent the night in preparation. Ryan used components from his survival kit to create small devices that would emit the frequency needed to deactivate the energy cages. The Guardians gathered specific plants and fungi, crushing some into powders and extracting sap from others. Neri worked alongside Ryan, their earlier wariness replaced by focused cooperation. As they worked, she asked questions about his world and the Federation. "Your people truly travel among the stars without destroying." Ryan explained the Federation's prime directive of non-interference and its conservation laws. We've learned harsh lessons from our past. Centuries ago, humans nearly destroyed our own world through greed and short-sightedness. We evolved beyond that perspective, but only after great suffering. Your honesty is refreshing, Neri observed. Most sky people we have encountered speak only of the riches they seek. Those are the worst of us, Ryan said, not our true representatives. As dawn approached, they moved into position around the poachers' camp. Ryan and Neri concealed themselves near the ship, while the other guardians spread out in a wide perimeter. Through the trees, they watched as the hunting party returned, dragging energy cages containing 3 more ferocious cubs, all sedated but alive. Ryan felt anger rising at the sight of the frightened young creatures, but focused on the plan. He waited until the poachers had secured their new captures alongside the others and moved toward the center of camp for their morning meal. Kaval initiated the first phase, a high-pitched whistle that activated certain plants around the perimeter. Immediately, large pod-like structures began releasing clouds of golden spores that drifted into the camp. The poachers reacted with confusion as the spores caused disorientation and mild hallucinations. They stumbled about, some reaching for weapons, while others called out in alarm. "Now!" Ryan whispered, and he and Neri darted toward the cages kept near the ship's loading ramp. Using his devices, Ryan quickly deactivated the energy fields on the cages, while Neri made soft clicking sounds to calm the frightened cubs. As each cage opened, Neri guided the young ferocious toward a path the Guardians had prepared, a route that would lead them back to their territories. They had freed 4 of the 5 cubs when one of the poachers spotted them. The man shouted an alert, raising his energy rifle despite his disorientation from the spores. Ryan pushed Neri down as an energy bolt sizzled past them, striking a tree and leaving a smoking hole. He reached for his pulse pistol, setting it to stun. "Get the last cub," he told Neri. "I'll cover you." As Neri worked on the final cage, Ryan fired his pistol, sending a non-lethal pulse that knocked the approaching poacher unconscious. More hunters were fighting through the effects of the spores, moving toward them, with weapons ready. Suddenly, a thunderous roar shook the clearing. From the forest emerged Thorn, flanked by 2 other adult ferocious. The massive predators charged into the camp, not attacking directly, but creating chaos with their presence. The poachers fired wildly, most shots missing, as the creatures moved with surprising agility for their size. "They've come to help," Neri said with wonder, as she freed the last cub. "The sacred ones fight with us." Ryan grabbed her arm. "Let's not waste their distraction." They fled with the last cub following the path to safety, as the sounds of chaos continued behind them. Once deep in the forest, they paused to catch their breath. The young ferocious gathered around them, making anxious sounds. "They need to find their parents," Neri said, kneeling among them. "I can call the adults, but it may take time." Ryan checked his scanner. "We don't have much time. The poachers will regroup and they'll be angry. They might use their ship to—" He was interrupted by a new sound, the distinctive hum of engines, but not the poacher's ship. This was larger, more powerful. "Federation engines," Ryan said, a smile breaking across his face. "That's the horizon. They've picked up my beacon." The massive Federation vessel appeared above the canopy, its silver hull gleaming in the morning light. Smaller shuttles detached from its underside, descending toward various points in the forest. Ryan's communicator, silent for days, suddenly crackled to life. "Lieutenant Commander Blackwood, this is Captain Reyes. Do you copy?" Ryan grabbed the device. "Horizon, this is Blackwood. Copy loud and clear. Am I glad to hear your voice, Captain?" "Likewise, Commander. Your encrypted distress signal came through. We're detecting multiple non-Federation signatures in your vicinity. Are you under threat?" Ryan quickly explained the situation, the poachers, the endangered ferocious, and the Aurelian Guardians who had helped him. "Understood," Reyes responded. "We're dispatching security teams to apprehend the poachers. Marine Team Alpha is heading to your coordinates for extraction." Ryan looked at Neri, who was listening to the exchange with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "Captain," Ryan said, "request permission to initiate first contact protocols with the Aurelian people. They've saved my life, and are helping protect endangered wildlife from poachers. There was a pause before Reyes responded. Permission granted, Commander. Proceed with caution and respect. I'll alert Federation Diplomatic Corps. Within the hour, Federation security forces had surrounded the poachers' camp, arresting the hunters and confiscating their equipment. The captured ferocious cubs were reunited with their parents in emotional scenes that further impressed the Federation personnel with the creatures' intelligence and social bonds. At a clearing near Ryan's original crash site, a formal meeting was arranged between Captain Reyes' Federation representatives and a delegation of Aurelian Guardians, led by Cavil, with Neri serving as primary liaison. On behalf of the Earth Federation, I extend our sincere apologies for the criminal actions of the poachers who invaded your world, Captain Reyes said formally. They do not represent our values or intentions. Cavil inclined his head. Were it not for Lieutenant Commander Blackwood, we might still believe all Sky People to be destroyers. His actions have opened a door to understanding. The proceedings were interrupted by the arrival of Thorn and Pebble, who approached without fear. To everyone's amazement, Pebble bounded directly to Ryan, rubbing against his legs with obvious affection. It seems you've made quite an impression, Commander, Captain Reyes observed with a raised eyebrow. The Sacred Ones have accepted him, Neri explained. This has never happened with an outsider before. As the diplomatic discussions continued, a framework was established. The Earth Federation would recognize Aurelius as a protected world, establishing an ecological outpost to study and preserve its unique ecosystem. The Aurelians would have final authority over their territories, but would welcome limited scientific exchange. We have much to learn from each other, Cavil said, but respect must be the foundation. Captain Reyes nodded. Agreed. And I believe we have the perfect liaison. He turned to Ryan. Commander Blackwood, the Federation Diplomatic Corps, has requested you remain on Aurelius as our first ambassador, overseeing the establishment of our research outpost. Your unique rapport with both the Aurelians and the native wildlife makes you ideally suited for the position. Ryan looked at Neri, whose golden eyes met his, with what seemed like hope. I would be honored, Captain. Over the following months, the Federation established a small, ecologically sustainable outpost at the edge of Aurelian territory. Ryan worked closely with Neri and other Guardians to ensure the human presence remained respectful of local customs and ecosystem balances. The outpost focused primarily on conservation efforts, with Federation scientists developing new methods to protect the ferocious and other unique species from off-world poachers. Advanced sensor networks were established to detect unauthorized ships entering the atmosphere, and a small security force remained to intercept any threats. As the seasons changed on Aurelius, the relationship between Ryan and Neri evolved from professional cooperation to deep friendship, and eventually to something more. Their different perspectives complemented each other, his technological knowledge and her ecological wisdom creating solutions neither could have developed alone. One evening, as they sat together on a high branch overlooking the valley, watching Thorn and Pebble playing with a new litter of cubs in the clearing below, Neri turned to Ryan. My people have a tradition, she said, her voice soft in the twilight. When two souls recognize each other across all differences, they may join in the ceremony of shared paths. Ryan took her hand, her blue fingers intertwining with his. On Earth, we call it marriage. The words are different, Neri said with a smile, but the heart's meaning is the same. Their union ceremony combined traditions from both worlds. Aurelian Guardians gathered in a circle of ancient trees, while Federation representatives stood respectfully nearby. Captain Reyes, returning for the occasion, served as Ryan's witness. Most remarkable was the presence of a dozen ferocious, including Thorn and Pebble, who formed an outer circle around the gathering. The creature's acceptance of the proceedings was viewed by the Aurelians as the highest possible blessing. Cavil performed the ceremony, speaking of bridges between worlds and the strength found in diversity. Ryan and Neri exchanged vows in both languages, each promising to honor the other's world and traditions. As part of the ritual, They each received a heartstone that pulsed in synchronization, symbolizing their joined lives. These stones are rare, Cavell explained to the Federation guests. They grow only when the forest recognizes a true connection between souls. That they formed for Neri and Ryan confirms what the Sacred Ones already knew: this union was meant to be. The celebration lasted 3 days with songs and stories shared between the two peoples. Scientists and guardians found common ground in their love of knowledge, while security personnel and younger Aurelians compared techniques for moving silently through the forest. 6 months later, as the Federation outpost celebrated its first anniversary, Neri and Ryan announced they were expecting a child, the first of mixed heritage between their species. "The healers say the child is healthy," Neri told Ryan as they stood on the balcony of their home, built where his pod had once crashed. "A perfect blend of both worlds." Ryan placed his hand gently on her abdomen, feeling the slight swell there. A bridge builder like their parents. The news spread quickly through both communities, celebrated as a living symbol of the partnership between Earth and Aurelius. Federation geneticists worked with Aurelian healers to ensure the pregnancy progressed smoothly, while both cultures prepared traditional blessings for the unique child. Thorn and Pebble, no longer small, but still bearing the affectionate name, became frequent visitors to Ryan and Neri's home. Pebble, in particular, seemed especially protective of Neri, often escorting her on her guardian duties through the forest. As the time of birth approached, a delegation arrived from Earth, Federation officials but also Ryan's family. His parents, initially apprehensive about their son's interspecies marriage, were quickly won over by Neri's intelligence and kindness, and by the obvious happiness of their son. "I never imagined having blue grandchildren," Ryan's mother remarked with a tearful smile. "But now, I can't imagine anything more perfect." The child was born during the season of new growth on Aurelius, when the purple canopy was interspersed with bursts of golden flowers. A daughter with skin, a pale turquoise, and eyes a remarkable mixture of human irises and Aurelian vertical pupils. Her hair was dark like Ryan's, but with natural patterns that glowed faintly, like her mother's skin markings. They named her Aurora after the Earth phenomenon of lights in the sky, a fitting symbol of beauty, created when different worlds meet. News of Aurora's birth spread throughout the Federation, capturing the imagination of billions. She became a symbol of hope and unity, living proof that differences could be bridges rather than barriers. As Aurora grew, she displayed traits of both species: human curiosity and adaptability, combined with Aurelian connection to the natural world. By her first birthday, she could communicate with the ferocious in ways even Neri couldn't, seeming to have an innate bond with the creatures. The ferocious, for their part, became unofficial guardians of the child. Pebble, now fully grown, and with cubs of his own, would often bring his young to play with Aurora under the watchful eyes of both families. 5 years after Ryan's crashed landing on Aurelius, the planet had become a model for Federation indigenous cooperation. The conservation programs had increased ferocious populations by 30%, while sensitive cultural exchange had enriched both societies. Ryan, now holding the rank of commander and serving as permanent Federation ambassador to Aurelius, stood with Neri and 5-year-old Aurora as they watched a new Federation vessel land, this one dedicated solely to medical and educational exchange. "Did you ever imagine this?" Neri asked, her hand clasped in his. "When you fell from the sky into our world?" Ryan shook his head, smiling, as Aurora ran ahead, already eager to meet the new arrivals. "Never. I was just hoping to survive until rescue." "The forest had other plans for you," Neri said softly. "As did I." Behind them, at the edge of the clearing, Thorn and Pebble watched with their extended family 3 generations of ferocious that had, in their own way, helped bridge the gap between worlds. Aurora turned back, calling excitedly, "Mother, Father, come meet the new friends." As they walked forward together, Ryan reflected on how a single moment of respect, offering food to a wary predator and its cub, had changed not just his life, but the relationship between 2 species and 2 worlds. The ferocious had taught the alien girl to trust the human, and together They had built something neither world could have imagined alone.